Palmeiras was spawning in wonderkids. There was Estavio, there's Endrick, there's this guy called Talis that's linked to Manchester United, and there's Guilherme that is going to West Ham. The deal is essentially done. He's flown to London to have his medical, and then it'll be announced if all goes to plan. And look, it's a big fee for West Ham. It's a big fee for a young player that isn't, ready-made and potentially normally plays on the right wing when you've got Kudus and you've got Bowen, and you probably need more of a central left-sided player. But this kid is a talent, and I'm going to tell you why this is a very smart signing for West Ham. You've got to take these risks. This is a tweet from 2020. This is a tweet from nearly 4 years ago, and this is from this guy that watches a lot of Brazilian football. He's in the know. And he was talking about 2 kids, Endrick and Guilherme. 2 kids. We know all about Endrick, but the other one was Luis Guilherme. He is one of the highest rated youngsters in Brazil at academy football. So we're going to talk about him. We're going to talk about what we know about him, how he fits in at West Ham, and that development plan. Because I actually think Endrick is the face. Endrick is the guy. Estavio is believed to have the highest ceiling. But I think Guilherme is probably most suited to the Premier League out of all of these players, and probably most likely to have an impact right away. And I'm going to explain why. I think he's physically the most able to cope with demands of first-team football out of all these players, but of course his physical development isn't finished. So what do we know about him? He's 18 years of age. He's reportedly 5'10", but some places say 5'8", and some places say 5'11". I don't think anyone really knows his height. He's left-footed. He can play as a left wing. He can play as a right wing. He can also play as an attacking midfielder. I forgot to include that in there. He can also play as a centre forward. I think he's a player that is a right winger, but most comfortable in the half spaces, coming more central, or could play as sort of a wide number 10, because I think he likes to come central when he plays as a winger. He's predominantly played on the right-hand side. He's made 40 appearances already, and he's a highly rated talent. There was a lot of clubs like PSG and big clubs looking at this guy, which shows you how talented that he is. And I mean, it's crazy that Palmeiras have just so many insane kids. Now, what he's best known for is his pace, dribbling and carrying. Carrying is literally just getting the ball from one half of the pitch and just dribbling up the other end of the pitch. He can get the ball and he can just get forward and he can attack. And I think he really suits what West Ham want to do. He really suits a side like West Ham in the Premier League. Players that can carry the ball, players that have pace, can take on players, can make things happen, get the ball up the pitch. I think that's good, but also retention is good. He's very good under pressure. Now, his weaknesses are weaknesses that I don't think are an issue at his age. I'm a Manchester United fan, and obviously Garnacho has similar issues. It's more decision-making and knowing when to release the pass and shot at the right time. Ronaldo was like that when he first came to United. Decision-making, passing, releasing the shot and the pass at the right time. Something that Garnacho struggled with, and he's had a brilliant season for Man United. I love Garnacho. I think that's quite a normal weakness for someone of his age, so it's not like a weakness of concern. So let's look at him. He's predominantly played on the right-hand side, but can play centre forward, can play as a 10, probably could play as a wide-sided 8, potentially as well. But I think for 18 years of age, if you compare him to Endrick and particularly Estavio, if you compare him to Estavio, not Endrick, sorry, he's definitely a lot more physical than Estavio and probably more ready suited for the Premier League now. He's a long-term project signing. I don't expect him to be starting games for West Ham. I expect him to get a few minutes here and there. And I think he's a player that can be moulded in when you've got the likes of Bowen and Kudus sort of supporting him as well. And what he's very good at is getting the ball and eating up space. He may not be as technical as an Estavio Foden type player, but he's very, very technical himself. I think he's very technically good, but he's more P&P, which I think will suit a side like West Ham. He's got that pace, he's got that power, he's got that ball carrying ability. He wants to get forward, he wants to make things happen, and he's a good dribbler. His goals and assist numbers aren't crazy, and people will be like, oh, he's got 20 games with 1 goal and 1 assist. They were 10-minute spells coming off the bench. He's not, you've got to remember that the majority of his games have been just coming off the bench for 10 minutes, where if you watch him play, you can see that he has an impact on the team as well. Estavio's got similar numbers that aren't great. Endrick's numbers are only a little bit better. You've got to remember that. So pace and power, very good on transition, and I think he would be able to match the demands of the Premier League physically and what West Ham would want. I think he's got a lot of similarities to Kudus. I think he's got very good understanding of the main game, and he can go outside. He's very big threat on transition, but I think like Kudus, he likes to drop into the half spaces and receive the ball where he'll be able to run at opponents. Normally he's played as a right wing this season, and I don't think West Ham are in massive need of a right wing, but he's a player that can adapt to all across the front three, and I think at West Ham he'll have better coaches at his disposal, which will help him adapt into probably a better player and find him a best role. But he can work with Bowen, he can work with Kudus to make himself, the best player possible as well, and they can improve him. I think his ability to dribble out of tight spaces, to get good power on the ball, I think his technique looks good. His first goal he scored was this banging long shot and the power that he got on that. I think when you look at the sort of P&P of him, that's good. He gives me that Elise, Leao, Rashford kind of P&P vibe. Not comparing him to those players, obviously, but they can get that pace and they can get that power behind the ball, which makes them a good threat. Some argue he's more similar to Rivaldo in terms of his play because he likes to come central so much and just dribble at people and be that sort of ball carrier, which is a big threat as well. And I think having that low centre of gravity dribbling, someone that can manipulate defenders, keep the ball in tight spaces, but also run into space. He has the IQ to find space and has the ability to create separation from his defender with his pace, makes him one that is a very difficult player to mark. Now, obviously, let's look at general analysis. Again, as I said, I don't think he's going to go and walk into the West Ham side and do anything amazing this season. I think it's about moulding him and developing over the next few years. But as we know, scored a wonder strike in his first game in the 95th minute. He loves to, play out wide, normally on the right this season, but he cuts inside and goes onto his left foot and shoots. He gets in and around the half space, and when he gets the ball, he likes to dart forward and make things happen. He's a player that wants to make things happen when he gets the ball, which instantly makes him a little bit more exciting rather than passing backwards as well. I think his spatial awareness is really good. I think his ability to find space or run into space on the transition has been good. But I think the fact that he can dribble, he can pass, he can create is all good aspects to have. And he kind of has elements of Elise and Rashford in him. I think he's more that kind of winger, particularly Elise, where he likes to get into that sort of half space there as well. So what do we need to know about his development plan, what's going to happen at West Ham? Decision making, when to release the ball and when to shoot is probably elements they're going to work on with him. I think you've also got to remember that the Palmeiras coaches aren't as good as other coaches, and they're trying to get Stavio, Guilherme and Endrick all in the same system when they're all very similar players, particularly Stavio and Guilherme, trying to get the best out of them. And I think, West Ham coaches, they've spent a lot of money on him, and the coaches would have been informed of this. They clearly have a plan for him, a development plan for him to get the best out of him. He was up there with Endrick as the two top talents in Brazil as well. And it's definitely a good player in there that will hopefully start to get the goals and assists for West Ham as well. I think Kudus with having a release clause next year in 2025 as well makes this deal a bit smarter, because if Kudus does go, potentially you've got someone that could fill Kudus' boots long term, although I think it would take 2-3 years to get to that rate. But I think, while I wouldn't say he's completely similar to Kudus, he has a lot of similarities to Kudus in terms of he likes to roam around the pockets of space, create space, get into the half space, but he's also good at beating players 1v1 and can cover left wing, right wing, attacking midfield like Kudus, and a very strong ball carrier as well. But look, I'm aware the fee is a risk. It's a risky fee for West Ham, and it's one of those where you might look back at it and you might go, that was dreadful. You might go, we're glad we did that. I think in terms of his development plan, I think it will be moulding him around Bowen and Kudus, getting the best out of him with good coaches, playing him around in a lot of positions to find what works best. And I think sometimes it's a risk, but lesser teams like Forest, Simon Murillo from Brazil, and now he's been linked to Tottenham and he's been linked to Liverpool and a lot of sides. He had a good season. Then you look at sort of obviously Moises Caicedo at Brighton. He came obviously not from Brazil, but South America itself. And then obviously if you want to use examples of Brazil, obviously Vinicius Jr., Endrick, Rodrigo, particularly Vinicius Jr. and Rodrigo, they've obviously paid off. And yes, there's a lot of South American sides that don't pay off and you have to take L's, but you have to take that risk if you want a player like Guilherme, because the only way West Ham are ever going to get an 80, 90 million pound player is if they find them young and they develop them as well. But I think Estavio may be high rated, Endrick may be high rated, but I think this guy could be most ready for first team football in terms of his physical development. And I think he could be a 100 million player. He could be a crap player. He could be a flop, but he could also be a 100 million player. Let me know your thoughts down below. Thank you for watching. See you next time. Bye.